your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, good to say I doubt it will stand up to something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, we're back with another episode of the Chrissie Mayr Podcast. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. Did I say all the places? Yes. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. Hope you guys had a nice holiday. Hope everybody had a good Boxing Day today. I didn't really box anything. I'm more just, I fed the tree. I want to keep the tree alive as long as possible. Okay. I have a fabulous guest today. She's pretty iconic and she's kind of internet famous. Can we say that? I think we can. Before I bring her on, I have a couple of stand-up comedy shows to promote. If you are in the New York City area, come on out tomorrow, Wednesday, December 27th, to Stand Up New York. My good friend Gino Bisconti's having a birthday show. He will be hosting. You can see I'll be doing a set. Of course, Gino, Keanu Thompson, a few other folks from the sort of compound media world, or just people that have bought Gino drinks over the years. That's basically who's booked on this show. And then afterwards, gosh, next week, I'll be going to San Diego. I think I was there in maybe last January as well. But come see me. I'm headlining the Mic Drop Comedy Club next weekend, January 5th and 6th. One show Friday, two shows Saturday with Lila Hart. She will be featuring for me. She's so gosh darn funny. Then I'm headlining in Dallas Thursday, January 25th at Hyenas in Dallas. Yes, this is the site of my trans heckler moment. My Dylan Mulvaney land whale hecklers were at Hyenas in Dallas. One of my favorite comedy clubs, period, but probably my favorite comedy club in Texas. So come on out January 25th. Lila Hart and Keanu Thompson will be joining me at that show. Then I'm in Morris Plains, New Jersey, Saturday, February 24th. At Tiff's Ale House in Morris Plains, New Jersey. So for tickets, go to ChrissieMayr.com. And then probably mostly February, March, April, I'll be staying local before I push out a human being from my body. Let me know. Maybe I'll live stream the birth. Maybe if you send in a super chat, you can come in and hold a leg. I gotta figure it out. Gotta figure out how to make content out of the birth. No, I'll probably be like, nobody look at me. Not even the doctors. Everyone leave. I'll figure it out by myself. Okay. Your guest this evening. You may have seen her on the Whatever podcast. She does a ton of debates, which I really applaud because she just handles herself beautifully. Some might say that she was just too sexy to be a lawyer. I agree. She's kind of a special creature. She's a triple threat. She's smart. She's incredibly well spoken. She's super hot. She left a career as a lawyer to do OnlyFans, and she's just kind of been all over. So I'm so happy she's here with me tonight. Jazmen Jafar, yay! you're like, look, I'm running late. I don't have time to put a shirt on.
It's not good, man. Okay.
You're like, no, I had time. I just chose not to. I'm such a big fan of yours, Jazmen. I believe you were on a Simpcast a few weeks ago, and you were on the Simpcast where I told people that I was pregnant, which
yes,
is a kind of a lot to lay on a person. Like, you're like,
I was
oh
actually
well.
really, really excited for you, even though I had just met you, and I'm like, is it weird that
Oh
I'm like
no, that's so
very
sweet.
sick about it. Yeah, I was
When my
like, oh,
when my friend Kia, I really love people's reactions to it because they're predictable. Like they're unpredictable. I mean, the people that I think are gonna be really emotional about it, some of them haven't been, and then some people, it's like what you just said. I kind of barely
yeah,
know them, but like I think it just has to do with your ability to feel. Like I wonder, like when I ever go to somebody's wedding, even if I'm not real close with them, and I see them like getting walked down the aisle, or I'll cry. I've cried at every wedding I've
yeah.
gone to, even if
My
if I
thing
barely
is,
know the person.
yeah, when you don't know, because when you know the person, you're like, oh, what the fuck, right? But when you don't know them, it's like you have this idealized version of like the love they share. Whereas if it's like your
It
cousin, you're like,
is.
oh, his fiance anyway. So
I went to a wedding with my sister many years ago. God, probably like 10 years ago. And this girl, she was falling out of her wedding dress. Like she had just not even cleavage. Like they were just out. And I remember she was like bending down to like take photos of grandma and basically was resting her boobs on grandma's shoulder. And they played smack that at one point during the wedding. And I was like,
me.
I don't know. And then they ended up breaking up shortly after. So I learned, I was like, all right, don't note to self, don't play smack that at the wedding. But
All
it's been
right.
fun. It's been fun. JB says you can read super chats between in between contractions. Oh my God. Would I even be able to? Push-ups, hello, push-ups. Next time you're in New York, want to grab some pheasantjan. I don't know what that is. Is that an Iranian dish?
That's a Persian dish. I actually love that dish too. And I'm pretty boring. I usually don't like good food, but I like that.
Push-ups is very good at researching my guests and then asking very pointed, specific
Oh,
questions. It's the
okay. I
same
thought
thing that I
he's not Iranian.
he's one of my super fans.
Okay.
I do a show on Compound Media every Monday, and he's one of my bleacher creatures. I gotta think of a better name for the guys that come hang out at the show, but he's a cool dude. Maybe he is Persian. God, I don't even know. I don't even know. Push-ups. Let me know if you're Persian.
Nina, I
So
think Nina's my Persian sister in your guys' little crowd.
you two are the only Persians I know,
Yeah.
other than my sister-in-law who's Persian, but that's really it. I just got finished listening to you were on Soft White Underbelly, which is a show that you actually love to watch,
I
and it was
love South
something
Park Underground. I can't watch it now though because I went on it. But before that, I used to watch it all the time.
you can't you didn't did you watch back your episode?
No, I can never watch myself back. I need to learn how to do that so I can like, fix my mannerisms and stuff, but I just cringe. It's like hearing yourself on an answering machine. Like I'm still in that phase. You might have you're probably past that, right?
I'm not past that. I'm supposed to tape and listen to every set, and I go, ugh, it just sits in my phone and collects dust because
Yeah.
it just feels like the doing homework part of it all. You're just like, I don't like
I
want to
don't
hear
want to
something bad.
confront
So
my it
you
just
just
gives me
ignore
like
it.
I'll listen to like 5 seconds. I'm like, ew, and I'll like throw my phone out. I'm like,
Ew, how do people listen to me? I
no
don't
wonder
understand.
everybody hates me. I hate me too. See, I get it.
I give you so much credit because I've noticed you've been invited on quite a few debate type shows, and usually
Yeah.
you'll have the position of it'll be like, are we for or against patriarchy, or do we think sex work contributes to the decline of society or not? And oftentimes, yeah, I mean, you're always in the position of having to either like defend sex work or defend it's interesting because
Immortality, incest, child, AI. Yeah, it always derails into those topics specifically.
and you really do a good job because when you do these debates, you can't get emotional, you can't get fired up, you can't really get cunty, which I would be terrible with. I would probably immediately get cunty. You have to keep a cool head. You have to keep your facts straight. You have to listen very carefully and answer exactly what you're hearing. And I just want to know how, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard your story of how you went from being a lawyer to getting into OnlyFans, but what made you want to start getting into other types of content creation? Like, I wonder if most people recognize you from your whatever podcast appearance, and then you started popping up on a lot of other shows. So what made you want to start doing podcast appearances?
So I started noticing that there were certain, because I was doing OnlyFans and I was like, okay, how can I grow my OnlyFans? And I was noticing that there were girls from OnlyFans going on Fresh and Fit in the whatever podcast. So I was like, let me listen to this. And I listened to it. I was like, okay, well, everything they say is fucking retarded. So I was like, let me like go on it and like promote my OnlyFans, but also tell them that they're fucking retarded. So then I started doing that. And what you just said about like knowing your facts and stuff, one thing like I always did is I always consumed like a ton of media that I disagreed with. So I became really good at understanding like the best arguments like against my position, which not that these podcasts are, really beacons of intellect on anything, but like that to me. So it was really kind of easy for me to like get into these settings and like understand where they were getting the points they were getting and kind of being able to combat that rhetoric. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, which is funny because in law school, I never did moot court and I never wanted to litigation because I was like, oh, I'm too lazy to like argue. But now I like arguing with my tits out on the internet.
Right. You were saying like when you were a lawyer, well, I guess you still have your license.
I still have my license, but I don't like practice day to day.
When you were practicing, you would mostly help people with their taxes primarily?
Yes, that's part of it. I was an estate planning attorney. I also did special needs, elders law, and guardianships and conservatorships. So like wills, trusts, I like transactional stuff, nothing too stressful, no like crazy hard deadlines, like, unless someone was dying. So that's the kind of work I preferred because I didn't want to be in like a super combative like environment. And then now I like debate like Christian
now look at
nationalism.
you.
I know. They're like, women can't vote. I'm like, hold up.
Hold the phone. What did you think of, or did you examine closely Britney Spears's conservatorship?
I didn't because that was like before I was, but when I was practicing, and this was like when I was in client meetings, no one really knew what a conservatorship was until the Britney Spears thing. So that's always what we would use to like describe like a conservatorship. We'd be like, oh, like Britney Spears, and that would freak everybody out. But I didn't follow that super closely, no.
Like, has she shaved her head? Yes. Has she taken a bat to a car? Well, let's sign her up for a conservatorship. Yeah, she was.
Yeah,
kind of
and I always don't like to like. I like to really delve into something before I give like an opinion on it. So I didn't want to just take like the public opinion on it because I know how those things can like brew and just like it's just like a big echo chamber confirmation bias thing. So that was always one of the things. There's always like lists of things. I'm like, I want to look into like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I want to look into this. And then I like one day when I'm bored, I might hit a topic, but
that's really great though. That's you have so much self-control in so many respects, but I think really waiting till you have fully researched something before you have an opinion shows that you have a lot of self-control. When you mentioned before that you read up a lot on what your opposition's best or strongest points would be, I guess, against sex work, what have you run into as like the kind of best argument against sex workers, I guess?
Depends what kind of sex work. Like I think the best argument, I think, against the legalization or decriminalization of sex work is just that when we look at areas where that's been done, we do see an increase in trafficking. So I think that's like an outcome-based thing that we should be cognizant of. Not always, like New Zealand, I don't think has shown that, but we've seen that in certain places in Europe. So to me, that's like, okay, if legalizing or decriminalizing this actually increases harm in some capacity, that's something to be cognizant of. That would be the strongest. I don't think there's a super strong moral case against it. But I'm open to hearing those out.
You don't think there's a moral case against it, so you wouldn't equate morality with religion then?
No, I'm an atheist. So I understand those arguments. And if you're operating from that moral framework, then yeah, I could probably argue your position for you. But because I don't subscribe to it, I don't find it to be particularly strong. I also don't find it to be strong the idea that, oh, a lot of women that do this don't want to be doing it and they wish they were doing something else. Because I think you can make that argument for like most fucking jobs.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many examples of somebody that God, particularly men who they fall into an industry like, well, I kept getting promoted. I'm making good money. I have a family to support. I don't necessarily love this job, but it's a sense of duty. And a lot of men don't feel like they have the option to just go like drop their job and pursue a passion or do something fun. So you know, just
like, this idea that, oh, she wouldn't have sex with you if you didn't give her money. Yeah, well, the subway worker won't make you a sandwich if you like, you know what I mean? Any job, like, you know what I mean? You're doing it for the money, and it is the best option, or the best option subjectively for the person generally in order to be doing it. And obviously sex work is such a broad spectrum. So it can go from like on one end, like the fentanyl addicted prostitutes on Skid Row that are usually on soft white underbelly, all the way to like people like me who are extremely privileged and making really good money and are pretty safe, like the way we do things, like, you know what I mean? We're not like at risk in the same way. So because it's such a broad spectrum, it's really hard to like pinpoint like, oh, sex work is all bad, because I'm sure that there's elements of it that are bad. Not that there's exploitation in it, all of that. But I think inherently, if somebody wants, like consenting adults want to exchange sex, because think about it, we have sex for like a bunch of stupid reasons. Like people have sex for all sorts.
Right.
Like
I put out for a large Greek salad once many years ago. It had anchovies. I couldn't resist.
People have sex because they're bored, because they feel like it, because they want to get ahead, because they want an advantage. So adding money into the equation, to me, I don't see a strong reason as to why that should change things. Like,
Well, I guess people could say you're commodifying or you're selling your emotions or your relationship. But
I mean,
it's
would
not,
you say that like what athletes do, what musicians do, like this idea of selling your body or selling your, like, what exactly are you selling that like an athlete isn't selling?
well, an athlete is in a sense it is similar because it is a performance, but an athlete is not just doing a sport to one person. It's like it's a show. But that's right. Like if you want to look at sex and sexuality as something that should only be shared with one person or your spouse, then you're probably not the type of person that would enjoy or watch or think that that you should use your sexuality in the form of entertainment or like a show, the way that athletes kind of do. Well, it is competitive. I mean, sex can be competitive too. God, have you seen a gangbang?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, if you just want to have sex in the context of one person, then go for it. The problem is, why should everybody else do that just because you want to do that? That's my thing. Like,
right.
People always find it really interesting. I don't actually have like casual sex. And I have a pretty low like body count, whatever. I learned this term from being on these stupid podcasts. And the reason for that isn't because I have a moral opposition to it, but because I just don't like it. Like I don't enjoy it. And so I don't pretend to enjoy it. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I should do it because this is a fun, like happy, like hot feminist boss babe thing to do. I'm like, no, like I don't enjoy it. Gives me negative emotions, so I'm not going to do it. And I think people should just kind of like, but like OnlyFans and being naked, I like it, and it doesn't give you those emotions. So doing what's best for you instead of trying to do like this one size fits all for society, I feel like isn't the way to go, at least in Western society for sure, because we are individualistic and not sociocentric like other areas of the world.
Right. And you mentioned you're an atheist. You haven't really felt yourself wanting a traditional relationship. So it's, even if you didn't do OnlyFans, it's not like you would be this traditional married with kids type person. It's like you still wouldn't be doing the right thing in a lot of people's minds. So it's not like the essence of OnlyFans means that you're going to get married and have kids.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole doing the right thing, like according to who, right? But yeah, one thing I've always stressed is people are like, oh my gosh, you do OnlyFans now. Like, what if people, I'm like, the kind of people I've always been around and being like educated, academia leans left. Like, no one has an issue with sex work. Men don't have an issue with sex work. Like, it's not like like the internet, like you're a fucking whore. Like, this is not how this demographic behaves. And that's still the demographic I'm mostly a part of when I'm not on the internet. So it's not a huge deal. It's very like crazy that I did it because no one else does it. And it's kind of like, ooh, but they don't have like the narratives surrounding sex work that I guess some other parts of the population do.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I've been jumping around. I want to kind of go through your origin story, which like maybe you're sick of talking about because I've heard it on so many interviews, but it's very fascinating and it sets you apart from a lot of people. Because most women who get into OnlyFans in the adult industry, maybe this isn't a fair categorization of it, but a lot of them, especially ones that I've talked to and interviewed and had on my different shows, they do so because the pay is so far and away much better than their current job. But you used to be a lawyer, and I think you probably made decent money.
Yeah.
But you made way more on OnlyFans, and also it appealed to you had kind of an aversion always. You had this aversion against having a kind of like typical 9-to-5 schedule. So
Yes.
was it more so the freedom, or was it just like, God, this is so much more money, or was it kind of both?
Well, I didn't know it was going to be so much more money at the time. I would have taken a pay cut to do this. So I guess that kind of answers that question. I definitely didn't like the 9-to-5 billable hours thing. I wanted the freedom. I wanted the time. I wanted the happiness. And it happened to also be a lot more money. So yeah, for me, it was like a first resort for a lot of women, and it's funny because some girls are like, oh, I want to make sure I'm going to make money doing it. And I'm like, well, what are you doing now? And they're like waitressing, making like, I'm like, okay, so for you, it's going to probably be a payout. For me, I didn't know that at the time. When I did leave my job, I was already making much more on OnlyFans, to be fair. But even if I knew I could support myself and even make a little less, I would have still chosen OnlyFans.
People are so quick to judge. It's like, it's almost like, have you, because I've had shitty, very low paying jobs. I think I think about like if OnlyFans had been around maybe 10 years earlier or something, who knows? Like maybe there's a universe where I would have dabbled in it, but I think a lot of people just don't understand. And I've had desk jobs where I felt so disrespected, so lowly, so just like, wow, I'm definitely not using my degree. I definitely didn't need to go to school to be this person's assistant.
It's like the most obvious thing sometimes. Like I'll be like, yeah, I don't want to work. I don't want to like have an alarm that I set and go to work, or I don't want a boss. And people are like, oh, how, like, it's like, no, a lot of us, the majority of us feel the same way. But when you say it and you say things like, yeah, OnlyFans is better because I make more money, I don't have a 9-to-5, I don't have a boss, it really irks people. And there are some people who are temperamentally best suited for those kinds of jobs. Like I'm just not, right? And so to me, it was kind of like a no-brainer. Like once I really stopped letting like society and the people around me like influence my decisions, I was like, yeah, of course.
I see a lot of this in comments sections, but I wonder if you directly experience this, that people will disregard your feelings on any other subject matter, politics, like really anything. It could be finance, it could be being an entrepreneur. They will disregard your opinions outright as a result of your working in the adult industry. Do you find that's the case?
The people who comment it are not disregarding it. That's why they're commenting. They're commenting.
It's like you're here. Yeah.
So there are people who I think you're right. They did, but those are never the ones commenting. And I would say in my case, I actually probably get way more attention. People are more interested in what I want to say because I do OnlyFans, because they're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So no, I don't think that's truly the case. People want that to be the case, right? I have people who follow everything I do and comment on everything I do that I don't care about your opinion. Well, yeah, you do. You're commenting it on every single thing that I do. So I don't think that's really the reason they're writing that comment is they don't care. I think they care and they're bothered that they care, so they're writing that.
Yeah, I just noticed there's a lot of misplaced anger going toward in the direction of like women in the sex work industry, because it's like I feel like there's some folks that maybe they're men that think, oh man, I would love to date a girl like Jazmen, but if only she wasn't on OnlyFans, if only she didn't do this kind of work. But it's like there is no universe where you're not doing this, so it's like you're living in a fantasy world where you can like have your cake and eat it too. And then there's folks that same thing, like they go, oh, like if you only weren't doing this, you would have been a housewife, you would have been a stay-at-home mom, like you would have been knitting hats for cats on Etsy. Like, well, like that's not where you would have ended up because you never felt compelled to go that traditional route.
It's also that the way our society is set up is there needs to be negative social sanctions for things that we consider to be wrong. And because sex work has people have such, deep-rooted opinions on it, the idea for most of history, and you can argue today, but less and less so, is that women who do this need to have some type of negative consequence. They have to be socially outcasted. They need to have the rest of their lives affected. So I see this a lot with people on the internet because it's like, oh, she's getting away with it. That can't be the case. Like the shoe has to, like, what is the saying? Whatever the shoe has to drop. But in this. Yeah, they are waiting. Oh, well, you're going to be alone. Oh, well, in 5-10 years, you're going to regret this. Like I need to regret it for their worldview to not be affected. And that is really hard for people because people have their worldview and we've been socialized into it. And when you see something that deviates from it and it doesn't give the consequence that society told you it would get, oh, if somebody got here and they got here the wrong way, then they must not be happy. Or they must have negative consequences. They're never going to find love. They're going to be miserable. They're going to regret it. Like that has to be what they believe. Otherwise, they have to rethink all of the stuff that they know and learned. And that's really difficult for people to do.
Yeah. Wow. It's fascinating because you're never going to get, even if you stop doing OnlyFans tomorrow, you're never going to get rid of sex work. Even if you were somehow able to ban everybody online, all porn was banned from the internet. Sure. Okay. Well, then we're just going to go back to what we were doing in the 50s and 60s. Like it would be maybe back to magazines or Playboy. It would be like physical media again. Yeah. Or people, right. Actually, even in between that people would be getting VHSs or DVDs of porn. Like, okay, they wouldn't let it online in somehow in this world, but you will never stop the demand, and so you will never stop the supply.
You would see calligraphy of like someone's dick going in someone's ass, and they were like people
hieroglyphics, cave paintings.
Yeah, you would see all that stuff. And it's funny because even when you look at the world, I just saw this the other day, like map of where porn is legal and not legal, and like if you were to go by that, like Africa should be a trad paradise. And it's like, no, people, they don't want to live in those actual places where these things are banned, right? It's much better in areas where they're not banned. So it's interesting. Not to say that there can't be any negative, like almost anything, you can find negative consequences and positive consequences. But porn and sex is so interesting because it really hits at a different part of our beliefs and our worldview than, something like video games or gambling.
Right. And if you are the type of person, like let's say you're the type of guy who does have a propensity to be addicted to online porn, it's like, well, you need to take care of you then. You need to make sure like you're not tempting yourself, that you're not, it's everyone's job to moderate their own vices. Like we're not going to come after liquor companies, gun manufacturer. Well, people are coming after gun manufacturers, but you don't see people coming after liquor companies for the irresponsible use of their product. And that's the thing. Is like you could make the argument, well, it's not like they're offering porn is just so readily available. Kids can watch it so easily if they're on Twitter. It's like, well, then you need to, as a parent, know that and not let your kid on Twitter or block it from their phone or whatever.
Yeah. There are much bigger links to, like, for instance, childhood obesity and watching TV. Nobody then says TV is terrible. it's morally reprehensible, it's bad, right? But even though there's a much weaker link to porn and negative outcomes, means porn is bad. No one says pizza is bad because people are obese, right? Pizza is neutral. Now, it may be bad for you in certain contexts. It's good for you, maybe in moderation. It can be fun to have. Like, people don't view porn this way. And most of that has to do with deep-rooted moral feelings with porn. And it's funny because the data on porn addiction actually 100% backs this up, like with moral incongruence. So there's no data linking how often you watch porn, how many hours you watch porn, how many orgasms you have when you watch porn in a week or in a month, whatever, even though there's been tons of research that's been trying to do this, that can link that to how likely you are to have negative addiction or whatever outcomes. The number one predictor of it seems to be moral incongruence. So, you know, they have people be like, what are your attitudes towards porn? How do you feel about porn? And people who feel like it's bad, they're religious, they feel like God is going to come, whatever, they're the ones who feel like they're addicted because they're really just normal. Everyone has a sex drive, but because like, oh my God, I can't stop watching this thing and it's bad for me, that's where the negative outcomes are seen. But that's not the case with things like gambling, alcohol, etc. So it's really interesting. The second biggest predictor of it is actually narcissism, antagonistic narcissism specifically. So I think that's really interesting.
What you mean, the more narcissistic you are, the more you will have a problem with porn, or the more you would judge?
The more you will. Well, porn addiction is all like like I have porn addiction. Right. People that tend to score high
control.
Seem to also, that's very much linked to how likely they are to perceive themselves as having a porn addiction. There is research, Joshua Grubbs did the paper on it. It's really interesting to look at. There's been 2 big studies, I think, that have now shown that. And so it's interesting because you go into these like no FAP communities, and I feel like even like there's some of that may be brewing into these guys being like, oh my God, I'm so addicted. Like, you know, interesting.
It can start out as like, I can understand an argument for like, a guy went through a breakup, a guy got his heart broken, a guy just went through a rough divorce, and it is easier to just like, porn is like the Band-Aid. Like, all right, I can get some faps out and I don't have to risk rejection or taking another, risking my intimacy or getting to know somebody else, or you have to deal with your fears yet. It's just like, it's a Band-Aid. So, but again, if that is keeping you from genuine human, if it's keeping you from, if it is like, some people can handle it, right, sparingly, right? Like when I'm out of town, I'm sure Frank, you know what I mean? Like, I would never say don't watch porn. How unbelievably unrealistic would that be? Because like, why would we pretend biology doesn't exist? It just feels. And you know what I mean? Like, that would be him being like, all right, well then throw out your vibrator. I'd be like, well, so I just think it feels to me pretty controlling to be like, no, I have to be there for all of
it's not always a substitution to sex. A lot of times it's a like for me personally, I don't watch a ton of porn when I'm not having sex, but when I'm having sex and the person isn't there, if I'm like horny, I'll like watch porn, like, so most people watch porn. That's what all the data shows, especially men, like upwards of 90% of men watch porn. And clearly not 90% of men are all losers, just addicted freak weirdos. Like, it's not the case. So it seems to affect a small population of people. And then it's like, okay, what is it about that population that's making them more susceptible to having this issue, right? We do that with anything, like alcohol. A lot of people enjoy alcohol in moderation. There's a small group of people who become alcoholics. And then you try to see, okay, what makes people likely? Is it partly genetics? Is it environment, etc.? So I'm like, because I'm in this industry now, like I'm super interested in that and the research that people are doing. I think there needs to be more, but it is interesting.
Do you ever have guys in your DMs or that are subscribers? Like, I don't know, do you ever sometimes feel like, oh God, well, like you're the bartender that needs to cut somebody off and they're drunk? Like, do you ever have any guys that are like, you're like, oh God, are they about to spend their last dollar on a video? Are they? Are they really not getting out there and meeting a woman when I can tell they clearly want to have a relationship? How often does
Yeah.
that happen? And then how do you deal with that?
So one thing that's unique about me is I'm anti OnlyFans management. So I actually manage my whole page. I interact with every subscriber. It takes me a few days to like get back to everybody, but at this point, I've had over 80,000 paid subscribers since I started. Like I've had a tons, and it is a very small percentage. And I want to say this, like I'm in a position of privilege that I am able to instill like certain rules that other girls may not be able to or aren't comfortable with. Like I have a limit. If you message me, like I don't respond to you and you message me question marks twice, you're done.
Oh,
I
that's
have
so obnoxious. Even in a text, nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, hello, babe. No,
Oh,
I'm like,
get
erratic,
lost.
restrict. I have limits. You can only buy 5 videos at a time. Then you have to wait 48 hours. Like I'm a very weird, unique OnlyFans creator in this way because I want healthy subscribers. I like my job. I'm not just doing it I like the money, but I'm not just doing it to make money because I can make money in other ways. I want to actually like my life. And the way I like my life is if I like the kind of fan base that I curate, and those like crazy people, they don't last on my page because I'm like, sorry, I think this behavior is erratic and unhealthy. Let me what I write. I find this behavior erratic and unhealthy. I don't tolerate my page. I wish you the best. I'm going to restrict. And then I restrict. They can't contact me anymore. And honestly, it's not super often. I would say like maybe like once a month, if that, like one person. So it's not super common, but it does happen. And those are the certain things that I do. Okay. You can only get a certain amount. I don't like anyone being obsessed. I don't personally facilitate, like I don't do girlfriend experience, anything like that. Cause I think it's like weird. Like I'm not going to pretend.
Exhausting. Girlfriend experience would be like,
I even have to
being like, God, girlfriend experiences, I don't feel like it tonight. I'm really tired.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, first of all, if I was your actual girlfriend, I would never be like, good morning, babe. Like, that's just not me. And I don't have fucking, so I treat my OnlyFans literally like how most people would treat like a Patreon. Like, hey, I make content. Here's the content. You pay, you can access the content. You can buy extra stuff if you want to. I don't treat it like I don't have mass messages that go out at like 11 p.m. Like, you up? XOXO to everybody. Like I just don't
people doing that.
Oh, 98% of OnlyFans girls do that.
They have a automated you up message that they'll send all their subscribers at like 11 p.m. or something like that.
Sometimes
that's actually genius.
I want to play, blah, 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 blah. And so I get a ton of subscribers that like are like, thank God that you don't do that. Like they're like, thank you for not like being a bot, because those accounts just seem like, and sometimes they are, because you just can mass message everybody, or they'll be like, hey, is your rebill not on? Do you don't think I'm sexy enough? Let's see if this changes your mind. Like I'm pretty cringy. I can't be like that kind of cringy. Like I can be like podcast debate cringy, but not that. So I always ran my page in a way that I felt like was my like actual personality. I also don't like shoot scenes or do anything that I wouldn't do in like that's not part of my authentic sex life. Because I would suck at it. I'm not a good actress. I can't just sit there and be like, I'm gonna look retarded. So I'll leave that to the people who are good at that.
Yeah, I really your story about when you were on the Soft White Underbelly podcast, when you're talking about this feeling of like jobs you would feel like you were leading a double life, and that really resonated with me, because once I started comedy, I mean, I've only not had a day job for like 2 years. So for the bulk of my time in the industry, like I've had some kind of regular 1 or 2 day jobs going on at the same time, and the fear of your coworkers finding out what you do is so real. You're trying to balance this, like, because you're at this job for the majority of your day. You sometimes become friends with these people. Sometimes I would let it slip, like, actually I do stand up, and then I feel like it's only a matter of time before your boss hears about it, and then it's only a matter of time before they're gonna probably fire you, because they're like, what, you don't want to be an executive assistant for the rest of your life? Like, what, you have goals you don't love, making travel arrangements?
Yeah. And in my case, I always, because I have this weird thing where I'm like, I'm overly introspective. So whenever, even now, like depending on the context, someone's like, oh, what do you do? Well, like if I'm in an Uber with like a creepy person, I'm going to say, oh, I'm a lawyer. I'm not going to talk about OnlyFans. But like there are certain instances where I'm hesitant because I have two jobs well, technically right now I mostly do OnlyFans, but because I'm also a lawyer, I have this kind of escape hatch that a lot of OnlyFans girls don't do. And it's funny to see like how different people treat you. And sometimes there's no difference. But every time there are times where I want to say lawyer because I'm afraid that they're going to judge me. And then the feeling of afterwards of me having made that decision because I was so worried what a random person will think is so much worse to my psyche that I like now I'm just like, I'm a whore, like 304 lawyer. Like it just makes me feel better.
Yeah. Sometimes you just want to save time. Like I don't want to be in an Uber and be like, I do stand-up comedy, and then they're gonna ask for a joke, and now I have to perform in a fucking Uber. Okay, it's gonna take an hour to get to the airport, and I'm just like, it's easier to
or you
just
say social media, oh, we're kind. So I'm just like, oh yeah, I do lawyer. I'm boring, transactional, or leave me alone. So those are different, but there are times I've noticed where I'm like, oh, you know, this person thinks so highly of me. It's like an older person or whatever. And then I hated the feeling of not telling someone something because I was afraid of what they would think of me, because the whole time I was with my double life, I was like tormented about like thinking of every single person, trying to figure out what I know about them, what their views are, how they're going to react to this. Like it was, some people are like, oh, she'd probably be okay with it. He's probably going to be disappointed. He's probably going to be like, what the fuck? And like all the time I was thinking like that. And so now I'm like, fuck it. I'm not doing that. It is what it is.
That's the difference between doing OnlyFans and stand-up comedy is like your male coworkers probably aren't going to like as fast rush to the computer to look up your stand-up as fast as they would to look up your OnlyFans content. So
yeah, it's actually my colleague, the attorney in the office next to me, is like a Mormon guy. And like, he was the one, because we were like because we were right next to each other. We were both talkers. So we would talk a lot, whatever. I was like, oh my God, he's really. And then I was in Business Insider like in March, and he like texted me. He's like, oh, you're in Business Insider? He's like, this is awesome. Like, and I was always so worried that he would like not like me now. And then you're always like, wow, I spent all that time worrying. And a lot of people are pretty chill about it these days, you know, outside of like red pill podcast comments. But like, I hate to break it to you guys, but as an OnlyFans girl, you can literally go through your life and have like everyone still fucking like you. I don't know what to tell the haters, but
picked the wrong industry. Did you find yourself wanting to engage with the red pill manosphere section of the internet, or did you feel like it was kind of an inherent part of going on podcasts like the Whatever Podcast and Fresh and Fit?
So it's interesting because when I quit my job, a couple of my really good friends were like, you're going to get bored. Like you're somebody who likes stimulation. You're intellectually curious. You like to like you can't just sit there and like sell pictures of your tits. I'm like, fuck you. Yes, I can. And then as time went on, like I started doing like streams where I talk about like philosophy, and like, then it just kept morphing into like, oh, these people are wrong. Here's some of the errors in the way that they think, or they would say something and then I would research it and I'm like, no, that's not right. So my personality and like my intellectual curiosity kind of bled out into, and that's what's so great about content creation. I mean, you may like know what I mean, where with content creation, like anything you're interested in, you can kind of bring to your content. And I feel like that's kind of what happened in these spheres. And also I was so annoyed of seeing them pick on like random, like 19-year-old girls who are like drunk and then being like, oh, see, like, yay, like this is how, and I'm like, okay, no, like you just haven't had anybody with like brain cells, not to say nobody on those shows, but you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, like I almost feel like I had a responsibility also like to this community, to all these women who this is really like their only choice, or it is really their best choice, like in the sense of like, you know, they don't have the skills that I have to actually stand up for us. So I was like, okay, I have these skills. I know how to speak. I know how to argue. I know how to advocate. So I want to do that for women and especially for sex workers, because I'm able to in a way that most of these other girls can't. So there's a lot.
You've mentioned you'll do these streams, right? Sometimes you'll like do some content where your clothes are on, or and you're just talking about like psychology or philosophy or just like other topics. And then you'll have content where you're obviously clothes off, like classic sexy type stuff. And I've heard men say this before, and I think it's just men, we've all heard of like the Madonna whore complex, or like, oh, I don't feel the way I do about my wife as I do about my mistress, right? So why do you think some men or most men feel this guilt or this conflict of like jerking off to women that they intellectually connect with, or they feel a disconnect between, right? Like it's almost like I guess this is two questions. So the first one I'll say is, why do you feel like there's a disconnect between, like you've experienced and you've mentioned in some of your appearances, like guys feel like, God, I think you're so smart and I enjoy like your discussion, but now I can't jerk off to you. Why is that?
I think when you're jerking off, or when you're in the midst of with anyone, with your wife, you are purely in your primitive brain, and you're super like you are objectifying. Like, I don't care if it's the love of your life. When you're horny, you are solely thinking of your sexual pleasure. And the way we've been socialized is to think that's degrading and that's bad. And because of that, we now have this like disconnect where it's like, okay, this is the people I degrade, or these are the people, which I don't think it's degrading, but and then these are the people I actually care about. And it's hard to mix those because we've been told that what you're doing is wrong. You're being rude. You're being disrespectful by jerking off to this person. You're being disrespectful for seeing this person as the sexual object. When it's like, even in loving relationships, like when you're fucking, you're not like, oh, what are these person's like thoughts and feelings on free will, right? Like you're in the moment, right? So, and that's one thing I found. Now, this isn't like a scientific study. I have no control group. One thing I found is that exposure really helps with this. So like a lot of these guys that are like, oh, it's so hard for me to jerk off to you, I'm having like a hard time with this. After a few times, they're like, oh, now I like am totally fine with it. Now it's actually fine. It's fine. It's like one of those things where once your brain gets used to it, I feel like the effect dissipates. It's kind of like just representation in general. Like the first time my mom watched a soap opera, she saw like a gay couple. She's like, this is disgusting. I can't see this. I can't stand them kissing. And then now she just like treats it like, oh, like a guy and a girl kissing. So I think that is probably where that stems from, is like, you're a porn star. I have a purpose for you. And if you deviate from that purpose, then I feel like I can't disrespect and objectify you in the same way. Where I think objectification is part of our lives. We objectify people all the time in different contexts and use them for the utility, right? Like you objectify your cashier, in different ways, but sexual objectification, because of the reasons I said earlier, has connotations associated with it that people find, shameful and a bunch of other things.
Yeah. So a lot of it's tied to shame. And I wonder too, like how many men, I guess, that you sort of encounter have this thing where like, oh, it's easier for me to sexualize a stranger or someone I subscribe to on OnlyFans than it is to my girlfriend or my wife. How does that happen?
You do find that, and you do find a lot of men struggling. Like, it's like, okay, this is a guilt-free way to fantasize about someone who is clearly consenting to it, right? Instead of like, a lot of people will be like, oh, I subscribe to you because, and I have a lot of like, I'd say like higher educated men, because they're like, oh, a woman like you would probably be at my office. I've been to school with a woman like you. I have a colleague with a woman like you. And you help me embody the fantasy and the feelings that I have for this woman, but she's off limits and I shouldn't be thinking of her in this way. So I'm going to move that fantasy onto you in a context where it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything wrong. So I do find that.
Okay, interesting. Have you ever had an instance where a guy was well, I don't know, you probably would not view this as cheating, but have you ever had an instance where like a guy is spending a lot of time and their money like subscribing to you or talking to you, and then they'll say like, oh, I'm kind of ignoring my wife or girlfriend, or like, we're gonna fight right now, or do you ever get the sense that, like,
I see that the most? But then again, I don't do a lot of like one-on-one relationships with fans. But earlier when I did, I would see that most in the context of findom. Like they would blow like all their like a ton of money on you that they wouldn't then be using for their family. And it would create this kind of like, yeah. I will say, like, these days, like, a lot of OnlyFans guys, like, their wives or girlfriends, one, don't care. They're sometimes doing it with them. They're turned on by it too. So this idea that this is something that men all do in secret and like their girlfriends don't know.
But
I
some
don't
do.
Some do.
Some
For sure,
definitely
some
are.
do. There's also a weird fetish that men have. And I'm gonna be honest, if I had a man, I mean, I don't care if he watches porn, whatever, but if he had this particular fetish, I would lose my mind. There is a popular fetish that men have. And because it's a fetish, I don't even know if it's a real thing or if they're just doing it for the scenario, where they are turned on by cheating on their significant other and they want you to like shit on their partners. Like, it's far more common than I anticipated. Like, they will send me like, if they're like, oh, you're so much prettier than my girlfriend, right? Like she would be lucky to even like be like that. And I'm like, I would be damned if a guy, like, it's like one thing to cheat on me, it's another thing to like get off to like degrading me. And I do find that fetish not like super common, but I do find it sometimes. I don't.
Right. You wonder, is it just a fetish? Is it just something? Is it just like some shit the guy says to get into the mood? And it's like, God, do their girlfriends or wives know? It's like, right. Because if I was in that position, like, I'd be like, oh, well, then goodbye. Like, go do that.
And the reason I think sometimes it's just a fantasy is it always starts with, I'm sleeping next to her right now. I'm like, okay, not all of you are fucking sleeping next to your girlfriend.
A lot of them are, though. A lot of them are up late at night, like, click.
They're like, I'm sleeping next to her right now, and all I can think about is you. Like, those kinds of messages you get.
That would be
heartbreaking. That they're like really turned on in that moment. I can't really speak to the other one because I don't have too many conversations that are long enough for them to open up to me about like their families and their relationships with their wives. It mostly comes as like, hey, I'm in bed with my wife, and the whole time I had sex with her, I was thinking of you because you're so much better. Like, you get those messages like that, and I'm like, okay, this is like a sexual thing for you.
To verbalize it to you, right? Because lots of people fantasize about somebody else. But
more than people.
You never get any kind of like pangs of guilt. Do you ever feel guilty?
No, not for those contexts. No, because the people in the relationship are the people who set those boundaries. And to me, that, this is on them. Like, this is my job. Right. And so I'm going to be honest, I don't care too much about protecting other people's like fidelity in their relationship. I just don't care. Maybe I'm just an asshole, but
you couldn't do what you do if that was a pull for you, if that was like an emotional
yeah. And I have this like weird thing, even in my relationships, like I lean like monogamous sexually, and like, but if the person like likes novelty, I never am like, okay, well, I want monogamy, so I try to find other people that already are like that. I think anytime you try to repress something that other people naturally have or feel, it doesn't go well. Even if they do it for a while, over time, they're going to stray or they're going to feel resentful. So to me, when there are relationships where the guy or the girl is like doing, I don't see it as like, oh, I should protect this like false image that they have, because to me it's false that, these people are like, oh no, we're this is it, and we're both so happy. Well, no, just one person is restricted from, doing what they want to do. And a lot of times when people restrict a person, they don't stay restricted for long.
That's true. Yeah. And I wonder if you ever feel like if you're the thing that could break apart somebody's relationship, then it probably was not that strong to begin with.
Yeah, like the whole idea of like a home wrecker. To me, it's like, it's rare, especially with OnlyFans girls, that like, but for you, this relationship would have been great and happy and they'll live together till they're 70 years old. Probably
if it wasn't you, there'd be somebody else.
Exactly. It's not like, but for Jazmen Jafar, our relationship would have been fabulous. No, it would have been another girl, or it would have been something else. So I don't think I'm ever the cause of a relationship deteriorating. I think I'm just one outlet in which that's manifested amongst many.
Have you ever gotten any kind of a message from somebody's like girlfriend or wife, like you fucking bitch? Like sometimes you'll hear about that happening on Facebook. Like I know who you are.
One time I did. She's upset lady, and she sent me this like long like thing, but even in that message, she's like, he's done this to me before, so it's usually a pattern.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. Was it from the guy's account?
Yeah, he sent it to me from the guy's account, and she's like, you know what, like, yeah, you can keep the money. He's done this to me before. But how, like, kind of like how can you live with yourself? And I didn't even know
this person. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know in the situation that he, and she was like, his kids and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, okay, this is also like a pattern with this person.
Wow.
And then I just didn't respond. Yeah, I've had some
kind of like
stories. All the subscribers' mom.
It's almost so much like I cannot be held responsible for, like, you come to one of my comedy shows, I cannot be held responsible for what you are offended by. If you storm out and you blame me for ruining your night, like that's on you. You should not have come to the comedy club. Same thing. If you're gonna ruin your relationship,
a husband and a wife, like, you know what I mean? You can't really be held responsible for that, especially because people know what they're signing up for. Like, I'm not a girl at your husband's job that's like, he knows that I do sex work, he put in his credit card, he paid for it. Like, it's like same thing. Like, you could say for you, like, if a girl is like super like politically correct and her husband subscribes to you and she's like, how could you do this? It's not your problem.
Be like, I laugh at her, I pretend it's you saying the jokes. No, that never happens. You mentioned you were raised in a Middle Eastern household, you're Persian, and you mentioned that when your dad did find out what you do, he asked that you just donate all the money to charity. And what I like is how open you are about, being raised in like a good family. Like, you're from privilege. It's not like you're like, fuck, I really need the money and this is the easiest, quickest way to get it. You're like, no, I was raised with money. I had a good job. I was making money. I just like enjoy this. Which is, I think, probably pisses a lot of people off because people are very comfortable hearing oh, you were living in a trailer park. Like, oh, you were out of options. Like, oh, it was.
I don't know if you went through the comments on Soft White Underbelly, but I mean, not some of them are really positive, but some people, it's like, oh, I come here for the stories of like people like drugged out that've been molested since they were like 5 on Skid Row. Like, I'm not here for this. And I'm like, okay, it's weird that you're like here just for those stories. Like, she has no justification for it, which is weird to me. And I also think that further, like, what happens is that the women that typically do this, it's true, they have no other choice a lot of the time. And people think that's because it's so horrible and degrading and your life sucks. No, my life is fucking great. But also, a lot of people don't have my temperament to the sense of like, they don't care if they're stigmatized or if everyone hates them. So you could pick any job. You could pick a nail tech. Imagine if people told you, oh, nail techs are horrible. They're never going to find love. Only the worst do nail techs. And then who's going to end up being nail techs? People that fit that narrative, right? So that's another area where I kind of deviate from it. And I'm like, oh, I do sex work and it's great. And I make my own boundaries and I do all this. And it's like, oh, that like hurts their brain. They're like, wait, no. Sex work is supposed to be something horrible. And you're supposed to be so unhappy and you're supposed to be miserable and you're supposed to have no self-worth and no self-respect. And you're just an object. And I'm like, okay, if this is the life of an object, like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. It's a lot of, you have to be really built a certain way to last in porn, on OnlyFans, like you
on the internet. You're built a certain way to do what you do. No, it's not for everybody. Maybe you've probably had similar experiences where girls will be like, oh, I see the money I'm making and the life I'm living. I want to do what you do. And then the like one
like, if you like money, do not become a comedian. Like, if you like living comfortably, don't do comedy.
Or someone's mean to them. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe someone said that. It like ruins their whole day. I'm like, yeah, no, this is not for you. You know what I mean? You can't be somebody that's hyper focused on what other people think about you, because honestly, no matter what you do on the internet, but especially this, you're going to get a ton of hate.
How did your dad find out?
I told my mom and then she told my dad. So I have this weird thing. I can't keep secrets because I don't want my day to be disrupted by a secret coming out, like, ever. Like, I want to, like, control when secrets come out. So I told my mom, I didn't have the strength to tell my dad, because me and my dad are really close. Like, he's like my best friend, like super daddy's girl. And I knew he'd be really fucking pissed. So she told him, and I did it like around the time I was taking the bar. And I knew that my dad kind of knew before I was taking it, but he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to like fuck me up before the exam. So I remember like after I took the exam and I knew I had passed, and I sat in my room and I was like crying. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, the next conversation I have is going to be about this. And my dad's like, oh, how'd you do? He texted me. I was like, oh, I think I did well. And he called me and he's like, okay, rest, get some sleep, and I'm going to call you tomorrow. And he never says anything like that. I was like, okay, here we go. And
he never tells you to rest and get sleep.
Yeah, he's like, rest up, because obviously I'd just taken a really difficult exam. He's like, rest, get something to eat, and I'll call you tomorrow. And I was like, can you just tell me now? Like, I was literally mortified.
Wow.
And that conversation, like, I could tell that my mom had talked to him, and he had like, it was like so scripted that I was like, okay, this is not. And he was like, listen, I know what you do. Just all the same stuff. He's like, I don't know why you're doing this. He's like, I think you've obviously got into the wrong crowd and they have influenced you, which is crazy because like, he's like, you're in the wrong crowd. And
like an after school special, like you're 16 still.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know who told you like to do drugs. Like, basically this is what he was trying to tell me. He's like, but this isn't for people like you. These are for the same stuff like, you hear all the time.
What kind of people did he say it was for?
He thinks it's for desperate, poor women. That's like literally the narrative. Like, and a lot of people think that. Yeah.
Not for poor people. It's how a lot. Yeah. I mean, like, I've heard a lot of stories. Like, I helped my parents pay off their mortgage with OnlyFans. This is the only way I could have afforded a house or a car. So
exactly. But he's like, this isn't for someone of your stature. Like, you're a lawyer, you come from a good family, you have parents. Like, the girls that do this don't have parents. Like, that's literally the stuff he was saying. And I was just like, the phone was on speaker and I was like sitting there as he was going through this. So clearly this is a mistake you're making because someone influenced you, because nobody in their right mind from your background with your potential would do it. So I'm not mad at you because you're brainwashed, but you need to, like, literally you need to stop and donate the money to charity, and then everything's fine. And like, because I was so not just financially, but also like emotionally dependent on my parents, like, I mean, I would fight back a lot and stuff. Like, I'm not somebody who like I like to debate, as we know, but like, I typically would listen to them. Like, I had gone through my whole life listening to them, and like everything in my body, like I had listened to this whole thing. I was quiet and I was just like, no. And it was like a shock to like my dad, because I was just like, no. And even when I said that, like, it all came through, and I was like, wow, you're really going to do this. But I was like, the second I thought of maybe listening to him, I was like, no, I knew that wasn't right for me. I was like, this is what I've always wanted. I've wanted an escape from this life. I just didn't think it was possible for me. I thought I was going to be miserable forever in this life. And if I listen to my parents, like I have my whole life, then I'm going to be literally cementing that reality. I was like, I have to try this. Like, I have to just do it. I have to listen to myself. So I was just like, no. And he's like, okay, well then, like, because he had bought me a house and stuff too. He's like, okay, well, like, they were trying different, and like, I know that they were just like, he's like, basically like, okay, we're not going to talk to you then. You need to leave this house, blah, blah, blah. But then like 2 weeks later, they would like, my parents and I are super close. So
he was going to kick you out of the house he bought for you?
No, he wasn't, and I was on it anyway, so he couldn't. But like, he was trying that, and then when I was like, oh, I don't care because I have money now, because I was a student and I was like living off them anyway. He's like, oh, okay, well then you can stay. But like, they were just trying anything to like, try to get me, they tried the silent treatment. When that didn't work, like, they were really like, what can we do here? And they realized, like, she's an adult. We don't have the power. And even the financial power we had, we don't have it anymore. So took like a few months, and and then this was before I had still gotten my law job. So I had taken the bar, but I hadn't gotten my other job yet. So when I got that job, they both texted me. They're like, oh, thank God you're going to put this nonsense business aside now and like do what. And they always went under the guise of you can actually help people with estate planning. Now you can do something that's good for your soul, good for the community, and good for humanity. You can put that nonsense aside now. We could all pretend this didn't happen. And then when I was like saying no to that, then they're like, okay, whatever. So now everything's fine. Like now, I wouldn't say they're like supportive of like OnlyFans, but they're very much like, oh, like, are you saving money? Like they're going a different route with their lectures now.
Did you see them for Christmas?
Yeah, I didn't see them for Christmas. We were all in Cancun. That last episode of whatever I was on, I literally left Cancun to go do that and then went all the way back. So
wow.
Because just scheduling wise, it was like the four of us trying to figure it out with Brian. Like it became a thing. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm leaving in the middle of my trip and coming back. So they were all there for them.
I never really I did not have strict parents at all, but it does seem like such a stereotype of like Asian or Indian parents. It's like they're very, very, even like Jewish parents I've heard, very, very strict, right? You can only be a doctor or a lawyer or something. And your whole life, your whole like childhood and young adult life, you follow by their rules. You kind of are A+ing everything. It sounded like you were a good student. My God, you're able to like actually be a lawyer. So I can understand the temptation and the allure, and like that, maybe that little kid part of you were like, yeah, it feels really good to like go against you guys and to do whatever the fuck I want and still be able to afford the life I want to live.
And I'm not like a huge fan of him, but I watched a Gary Vee video that same night, and he said something where he was like, it was like an Asian kid who was saying like, oh, I don't want to do this, but my parents want me to do it. And he said, if you never take another penny from your parents, I can't explain to you how happy you will feel. And I can honestly say that's so true. And I'm very privileged. I was at this point, I was making like over 50 grand a month. Like, I'm not saying like I was like, in the, but my point is that like, it's so true, because the way these families, one is like, you're very close to your family. You're an extension of your family. These are sociocentric communities where it's like, it's not like here in America where it's like, oh, you're a person, and then like you have it's like, oh, somebody else, what you do affects my reputation, affects your sister's reputation, affects the family's reputation. And they're so like supportive of you in like so many ways of like, when other kids turned 18, their parents like, okay, bye. And like your parents are still like, oh, let me buy you a car. Let me do this. Let me support you. My dad, when I was in school, he like took everything for me. I didn't touch anything, moved my car, took like everything, like
okay.
Still, like, he takes my car.
Too easy for you, kind of,
Yeah. So you become super dependent on them. And almost like, sometimes it can be unhealthy. In certain ways, it can be unhealthy because you're like, I need my parents to navigate this world for me. And this was when I was like 25, 26. And I was like, I need them. I won't know how to survive. I don't know how to do this and that by myself. Like my dad has to do it for me, or they have to pay for it or something. And so I would say OnlyFans has been such a confidence boost for me, because it was the first time I said, no, fuck that. And I started learning how to do things for myself. Because, at the time, especially when I wasn't talking to my parents, oh, I can't just call my dad when something's wrong with my car. Oh, I need to figure out how to like do this and that. And that gave me so much confidence, because I was really insecure about that before. I was like, everyone knows how to like live life except me. So yeah.
For how long were you not talking to your parents? Was this right after they found out?
Yeah, probably July of 2021 to like, wow, because I remember on my birthday, which is in January, my parents like sent me a text, but it was probably like a good 8-9 months that, and then my mom started talking to me first, and then my dad started warming up, but I still was talking to my sister, and my sister was very much like, oh, they ask about you every day there. And they were also super like worried. Like they thought that like my parents are still like, one, culturally and age-wise, like they think like someone who has a tattoo does like crystal meth, and there's no one that has a tattoo doing crystal. Like they like are like, she's doing OnlyFans. Like, what else is she doing? Cocaine? Like, they really thought that like I was on this like horrible path. So they were constantly asking me, like, what is Jazmen doing? What is she like? Is she okay? Is she like on the street? And it's like, no, like I'm still the same person. I just do OnlyFans now. That just couldn't compute with them because they have like this prototype of the type of person that does OnlyFans. And so when I started doing that, and they don't even really know. The only reason my mom knew what OnlyFans was is because I told her about it the year before, that one of my friends was doing it. And she still calls it my fan. She's like, are you my fan?
Are you? Yes, I'm a lot of people's fan, Mom. Yeah. My cute. Who has a stronger personality, your mom or your dad?
My mom. Like, my mom has a more combative personality. My dad is like funny and like more chill. But I was much more worried about my relationship with him because, not that I'm not close with my mom, but we're like closer. And also my mom, I'm not afraid to piss off my mom because like she will like go at it with me. My dad will just get sad, and I don't want to make my dad sad.
Oh, yeah. I was afraid to piss off my dad growing up, but I was actually fucking scared of him as a kid. So I was like, I'm gonna get beat. But then as an adult, also scared of him because I just like it made
Also
me
with
like
sex
such
work,
an aversion to yelling.
Yeah, with sex work, it's a little more awkward with your dad than with your mom. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I'm not afraid
totally.
to, like, now I try to trigger my mom. Like, she's like, your boobs are way too big. I'm like, yeah, I make a lot of money off them. Like, I'll just like
get a reduction. Yeah, I mean, like, what do they want?
So like,
It's
but I'm not gonna
like
do
if
that.
your parents. It's almost like if your parents weren't so strict, like you possibly wouldn't be where you are today.
Yeah, maybe to a degree. And my parents were strict compared to like Western parents. They were probably like average or below compared to Middle Eastern parents. But yeah, it could very well have been the case that if they like let me be more free, then maybe I would have found something else other than law and OnlyFans that I would have been doing. But I'm pretty happy with this. Like, it's a pretty fucking amazing job.
Yeah, I definitely see the allure of like not even like God, just being able to make is well, I've never felt like I've made enough money, but I can probably imagine how awesome that feels. But again, it's like
Yeah,
everything's a trade-off.
that's a really good part of it. But also just the freedom, the being able to travel, making your own schedule, being able to define, like, choose what kind of content you want to put out there, having a lot of autonomy and choice in anyone's job. I mean, this is also what the data bears out. Like, the more flexibility, autonomy, choice you have in your job and the day-to-day parts of it, the more you like your job. So in that respect, like having no one to answer to, not having to request days off or, like being in complete control of that, to me. And it also, for me, it made me, because in all my other areas of life up until this point, I was just meeting deadlines, doing the exams, etc. But now it's like, oh, the more I put in this, the more I get out of it. Like, it's the first time that was really like true for me. So because of that, I'm more motivated than I've ever been before. Like, I'm still a procrastinator and stuff, but like for school, it was like, oh, okay. Like, law school, the way it works is all your grade is based on a 4-hour exam at the end of the term, pretty much. And so I would do nothing. I didn't give a fuck. I was like 2 weeks before the exam, I'd be like, okay, let me figure this out. Right. But I didn't have like a day-to-day drive the way I do now, because now I'm like, okay, I want to be successful at this. I never wanted to be successful at being a lawyer. I just knew I could be.
Yeah.
But I never.
So you're like the type of student who is like so good, you could just like wait and cram the night before and like still get an A.
And then perform well. I'm good at test taking, and a lot of academic success is based on your ability to take tests. So because of that, like especially essay exams, I can sit there for a long time. I work really well under pressure. So exams were like people are like, how could you put aside all of the like hard work of being a lawyer? I'm not saying parts of it weren't hard, but like it just wasn't that hard for me. Like, it really, like, school and learning comes easy to me, but like working, like you have to meet your 6.5 billable hours a day. I can't in those environments. My brain isn't set up in a way to be productive every day. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's just not mentally stimulating enough for you. It's too routine. What's your
Yeah, I
birthday?
used
Oh,
to
January. So
literally-
you're a Capricorn?
Yeah. I used to literally, because so many other lawyers were working remote. And so the way lawyers work is you bill your time in 6-minute increments. And I would sign like stuff on behalf of other lawyers, and that would count as 0.1. So I would have one of the other paralegals like give me a pile, and each one would be 0.1, and I would try to get at least like a couple hours of billable hours a day. I was like, okay, I need to leave. I'm literally losing money by being here, which I was at the time. Not in the sense of like, but like my OnlyFans, like it was growing. And then once I was at my job for like, it like was stagnant. And then once I left, it went up again because you can focus on it. You can think about like, oh, like if I was still working there, I couldn't go on these podcasts. Like I couldn't do anything like that.
Right.
So yeah.
Let me get to a couple of these super chats. Bob Tillman, Chrissy, congrats on the impending arrival of your carbon-based unit. Wow. How scientific, Bob. Thank you. It's very sweet. Push-ups. She told Nina it's her favorite dish. Good interview. Thank you. Push-ups again. Iran shows what happens when a society is too sexually repressed. Khomeini forced women to veil, yet he wrote a book about how it's okay to bang animals.
I do want to say, in my experience on OnlyFans, people that are more repressed or from repressed cultures, they are like struggling. They're like have the craziest fetishes. They're like super freaky deaky. They're more likely to exhibit those type of behaviors where they want to spend all their money, like those negative, like, yeah. Whereas like people in Europe are just like, hi, can I see you suck your toes? And I'm like, okay,
they drink wine at breakfast. They jerk off before lunch. Yeah.
Day, I'll be back soon. Like they don't like have this post-nut clarity where it's like, oh my God, what did I just do? The way that repressed people do.
That's definitely true. R33, thank you for the super chat. Chrissy, filing cabinet. That's Frank. Congratulations and happy holidays to you, Jazmen, your fams, and the chat. Thank you. It feels weird calling you R33. Anthony with the satanic super chat. What's the going rate, babe? I'm sure you get that a lot. People think because you do OnlyFans that you will meet people in person. Push-ups. Any thoughts on how to keep it away from kids? I have a feeling Jazmen will say, this is not my job.
It's not. If there's like, I wish there was a way that we could keep it away from kids. I just don't think it's feasible other than to put the onus on the parent. A lot of the bills like COSA, those things that the government's pushing forward, it's going to just chill speech, and it's not going to do what they want it to do. The internet is just too vast. It's too available. It's going to be very difficult to basically what those policies are probably going to end up doing is fucking like all of us over, making it more strict, and then not even help because you can still find that content when you want to. So it's really hard. If there was a way, if I could snap my fingers and make it not available to children and just available to us without it having any effect on our rights, because, when the government takes away our rights, they don't give it back to us. So I would be all for it, but I haven't seen anything like that being implemented on a government level. I think it's just a parent thing. I think your kids are probably just going to see it. So you should probably talk to them about it, educate them on it. So they're not, so they know what they're seeing and they're able to look at it in a healthy way and not get the negative information from it. That's like the best. I don't know. What do you think? You're about to be a mom.
Oh God. It's really scary. And like to a boy too. So it's like the porn conversation is actually going to be a conversation, but it's like, again, if I were having a girl, it would be like the don't do porn conversation. So porn is going to come up one way or the other. Gosh. Yeah. I probably just navigating like when to have the talk. Cause I never had the talk. Like
most of us didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an awkward talk. Like I think a lot of us don't realize like how awkward it is for parents to do that. Like, like it's like you should give us this, but it's like even me, I'm pretty sex and it's like, oh.
That's why I'm so grateful for Frank because he I mean my stepson is 12, so it's like he's been like having that talk with him kind of in chunks, depending on what age he's at. So I think he's done a really good job and like presented in a really like healthy way, but not like too much too soon. But again, I'm not like there for the conversations, but
Yeah, exactly. I think if you speak to your children and educate them on it, I don't think it's that bad. Like, I think it's a normal part of human nature to explore and to explore your sexuality. The danger becomes when, it goes out of hand, or now you're seeing like mainstream porn and you think this is how sex is, and you think this is how big my dick needs to be. A lot of women back in those days, they used to feel negatively about their bodies after seeing that. That's actually changed since amateur porn and stuff has become more popular. But there can be like positive to like no negative effects from children, age appropriately exploring this kind of stuff, because it's normal. It's normal. Like your 12-year-old has feelings.
I guess it depends. I guess it depends. You have to see like where they're at, and that'll determine the talk. Push-ups, not Persian, Greek, but we don't need to watch 300. That's good. Michael Gavinaleo. Michael loves porn. Hi, Jasmine. I saw you were interviewed by Marquette Burton. He seems like he's a fraud and liar. Brian, the host of whatever podcast, sucks. Lol. Okay, no questions.
Marquette. Yeah, he's just. I did that interview or whatever, the interview / debate. And like the first 5 minutes, Chrissie just had a very cool like intro video. He has like a 10-minute intro video of him rapping and like jump. It was the most, I didn't even know like what to do when the video ended. I'm like, how do I like position my, it was so bizarre. Yeah. He's an interesting one. Brian's a really interesting person too.
He is.
I have like, maybe I just have really, because compared to the fresh and fit people, he's like so like sane and like calm. So because of that, I have like a positive connotation, like association with him, because I'm comparing him to like the worst of the worst. So maybe.
Do you get the sense that Brian actually hates or loathes women who do OnlyFans?
I get the sense, this is my psychoanalysis of Brian. Brian, either because of just whatever reason or early onset experience or just experiences with dating, he has this great fear and aversion to feeling like he's being played by women.
Yes. So I get the sense he's so afraid to be like taken for a ride financially.
Get someone getting a free dinner out of him. Like he just has these weird things. He's like, yeah, what if I like take this girl to dinner and then she takes the leftovers to this other guy's house and she fucks? Like it's like the weirdest like
most people don't even eat the leftovers. Yeah.
Of like being like a sucker. Like that to me seems like his biggest fear. And so this idea of this woman who's manipulating men or is very promiscuous or has a lot of power, like that really bothers him because he's afraid of that. I don't know if he necessarily like I don't think he like hates women in general or anything, but that to him, he's very much like, I don't want women to get the best of me. And he thinks that society is set up in a way where the one time I was on with, what was her name? Lauren, like for 2 hours, he was just going on about, it's not fair that we have to be in the draft. And you don't like, it's like really like minute parts of like society that he's like, no, this is really unfair to men. So I think that's what I would say is Brian.
He seems like he's really afraid. And it's like, you know what, that might happen to you. Your worst fear might happen to you out in the dating world. You have to, but that's part of the deal. You can't control every aspect of putting yourself out there to women. You have to make yourself vulnerable. You have to take that risk because it's worth it. You can fall in love. You can meet somebody really great. But if you're going into the dating process so tentatively and you're so leading with your fears, you're not bringing your best self. You're not making your best, you're giving yourself a good first impression.
I mean, like he says, like if he's dating or he's on dating apps, the girl that he's on a date with can't have any other dates scheduled. And I'm like,
but what if
he's like, you can't go to dinner with me Wednesday and then have another date planned for Friday. Like I'm not going to pay for her meal then. Like I'm not a fucking sucker. Like that is very much like the energy.
Most people eat every day.
I know.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, she doesn't know you yet. Like, he expects women to be like 100% super loyal to him, like off the jump. But that's if a woman is like that, then something's wrong with her. Like, right?
And it would be
need
insane for a woman to expect that of a man. Like, no man out there dating it would if he could. You know what I mean? They're gonna have as many possible dates lined up as they can.
Yeah, and if
Same as
you're
me.
trying to find somebody you really vibe with, you have like that's I feel like if you're gonna use dating apps, that's how you're gonna do it. You do need to go on a bunch and see what you like and see who you hit it off
Especially
with. But to Brian, he sees it as no, they're taking advantage of me.
Especially if you're at a place in your life where you're like, look, I want to meet somebody and get serious this year, then yeah, you do have to kind of maximize your time. That doesn't mean bang everybody, but yeah, go do a lunch date, do a dinner date.
I think it's a confidence thing because, like, to me, like, if I was going out with someone and he was going out with all these other women, like, I would be like, oh, well, I'm still pretty cool. But I think in Brian's head, he's like, oh, are those guys better than me? Are they this than me? Is she going to want to fuck them? Is she not going to want to fuck me? Like, what does that say about me? I feel like that, like, maybe, but not this. I don't know any of this.
Of I'm so great, she's not gonna want to go out with any other guys. I'm so great.
That's what I think. Maybe I'm just wrong.
Exactly. That's how it actually goes. When you meet somebody that you really connect with, you cancel all your other dates.
Yeah, yeah. We've all done that. I've done that before. But he's very nice. Like I don't have really anything negative to say about him, like in terms of like how he is in person. He's nice. He greets everyone. He says thank you to everyone. But I think like that's like the underlying a lot of his, or he has a story. This was on the one I was on with Anna, a Star Wars girl, where he's like, yeah, I had this girl and I got jumped. And like 3 weeks later, she left me. And I bet you it was because I was jumped. And that was the, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think he sometimes has, like,
wow.
And
So he has, and everyone's insecure about something, but like, yeah. It's
so,
interesting.
and
was he divorced or something? He sounds sometimes like he was taken for a ride in a divorce. That's how he comes off. Like he had to cut somebody a lot of money.
He's very anti-marriage, and I think part of
that's
that
his
is
fear.
Also, that's his fear because he doesn't want to get married, and he never doesn't think that he has this idea that like, and a lot of people in the red pill space do that. Women just take men to the cleaners and divorce and take everything and just to upgrade to the Chad, and you know that seems so. I don't think he was married.
So maybe it's a confidence issue because if you truly think you're great, God, I remember dating being like, oh, if you want to see somebody else, go for it. Like I should be the person that you are excited to see. So like if I'm not doing it for you, like please go on more dates. So
yeah, you and I think are both so unique that it's like if I'm your cup of tea, you're not gonna really find it anywhere else. And if I'm not your cup of tea, then fuck off.
Yeah. I like him. I think he's an interesting internet presence. Legal Vices. Oh, what's up, Legal? Hey, it's two of my favorite peeps together. Sup, Chrissy. Sup, Jazz.
What currency is that?
North Korean, I think, or Korean. Yeah. No, he's not in North Korea. He's in South Korea. Right.
I was like, wait.
Yeah. I think that's yen. I don't know.
Good to see.
Korean yen. Push-ups. So she would ban Bull Mao. Yeah, Bull Mao was a bit of a stalker I had to block. He was blaming me because he kept falling for different scammers for this girl, Eva Lovia, who used to do porn, but now just does podcasts and stuff. But he thought it was my fault that he kept getting scanned because I
get those. Like sometimes someone will send me like a fake profile of me and be like, this person just scammed me using your pictures and they said they needed like a visa to get into you. I'm like, okay, if you fell for that, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
yeah,
don't pay get a visa to the United States online.
Thank you, Mangus. Morty Smith. Seriously, though, is it a big brain move to let your wife get cream pied by other men while scribbling frantically on a page after being asked to make it better? Oh.
What is this a reference to?
I don't know. Is this about? Are you talking about? I'm not sure what this is about. I know that Brian sometimes scribbles frantically on a paper. But I'm not sure the context of this.
Oh, is this about Destiny?
I don't
or
know.
Adam 29?
I wish I knew. Some people in the chat think it's about Destiny, but yeah, I feel for Destiny that was so public and splashy. But again, when you're a public person, that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I think he has. He's like a pretty he seems like he knows, like he's been on the internet for a while. He's not someone that's getting, I don't think. Obviously, I think his personal life, like that's separate, but I don't think the internet stuff really, I didn't get the sense that it even gets to him.
Yeah. I think he'll be fine. I hope he meets somebody even better. Dan McLeese, Jazmen, what does your investment portfolio look like to make your money work for you? Wow, maybe this is your dad asking this question.
I do have a financial advisor, so I do try to be, I could be better, but I do try to be smart with my money because, I know this isn't going to last forever. That's how I feel. And I still struggle with this, and I'm in my like late 20s now. But if I was in my early 20s, like the girls that do, like I would have blown everything. Like that's just what you do when you're
I would
young
have
and
too.
dumb.
I would be like, I'm going to buy myself 40 Skip-Its. I'm going to buy everything that my parents didn't want to buy. I'm going to buy a Teddy Ruxpin. I'm going to get a CD player. I'm going to buy a bike.
Like that lifestyle creep thing. Like I feel like I kind of, but I still, because I haven't, and like I feel like I will look really fucking stupid if I like, because like, I'm a lawyer and I'm doing this and I'm so like, yeah, about it, that if in like 5 years I'm broke, like that would be like not a good look.
That's true. I mean, just like everything.
Yeah.
Even nothing is forever. Like nobody, even if you have a stable job, how many people have the same job like our parents did their whole adult life? It's extremely rare.
It's really rare these days. And, it's funny because it's like a criticism again, only sex workers get like, oh, it's only a few years. You can't do this when you're old. It's like, are you writing that under LeBron James's pro? I don't think so. Like,
yes, you're like a professional athlete. You tear an ACL, you got to take yourself out of the game.
You're done. Or you hit 35 in sports, you're done. But for some reason with them, it's like, oh, that's fine. And you would still take it if you had the opportunity. But with sex work, it's like, you're so fucking retarded. You can't do this in 30 years. I'm like, I don't want to sit in office in 30 years. Okay. So
you could though. I mean, people would go for Jill. Like, yeah.
There's a lot of girls killing it at like all ages. I have a friend, she's like 40 now, and or almost 40, and she's doing great on OnlyFans.
Go to any sort of retirement community in Florida. All the 70-year-olds are still banging and are still very, very lusty. So it's definitely a thing. And think about it, when our generation gets into their 70s, we're going to be more online than any old people that were ever before us. So, God, it's probably going to be more. It's probably going to get weirder.
Yeah, I feel like boomers are very tech, like they're on there like my mom.
You know what? Good for them. They're technically retarded, but they also had it the best. They were all able to buy houses, like making 20, 30 grand a year, one income. Like they had it pretty good. I think they probably had it the best.
I feel like no one has pensions anymore. Like stuff like that.
They did all right. They had Woodstock. They could like do drugs and smoke and be pregnant. Like, oh, we didn't know, because they genuinely didn't know. When did you realize that you did not want a traditional relationship?
What do you mean by traditional relationship? Like, when did I realize that?
Like, do you ever see yourself wanting to get married or have kids? It seems like not.
Kids, maybe, but I would do it in my late 30s, which I know a lot of people here think is crazy, but it's actually funny. If you look at like Canada and Europe, like especially their socioeconomic status people, like my cousin in Canada, she's a lawyer too. She had her first like 32, and everyone was like, she's so young, because most people have it between 35 and 40, which would be the age I would do it in. Marriage, like I personally don't think, like, I would never promise myself to someone for the rest of my life, just because I don't think that's a promise people can keep. Like, I don't think people that are making it know they can't keep it, but I do. Like, I know a little bit more about how the brain works, how sexuality works, how we can only really predict the foreseeable future, and your life is not foreseeable. So to me, promising yourself to someone for life, forever, till death do us part is very binding and very almost like creepy to me. So in that sense, like, it doesn't mean I don't want long-term happy relationships, but this idea of like we are just stuck together forever. I don't think I would ever do that. Now I might get married for like the social, not the social mostly, but like the economic and like benefits, or, you know, if I have children
Health
and it
insurance or
protects
something.
right. Yeah. So, but I guess the only sense I don't want a traditional relationship is this idea that like, okay, we're going to be together forever and this is the way it is. And neither of us are ever going to look at anyone else ever again. And you can't look at porn. Like, I'm not doing that. But
Yeah, I definitely
like,
see.
yeah, I do want like love like everybody else, you know.
And it is interesting when you're in a place, because when I was in my early 20s, I was so afraid of the idea of getting pregnant because I was like, well, I have to prepare for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is being a single mom. And I was like, well, I can't be a single mom because I'll never make enough money to be a single mom. So that kept me from like getting pregnant and having scares, because I just was like, well, I'm not able to do, which is very cynical and very black pilled, but that was my mentality. I was like, I have to be ready for the worst situation possible.
Well, that's
And I
not
never was. But now that, like, if
yeah.
you're in a position where like you could afford multiple kids, not need that second income. So yeah, you could just get a sperm donor, really. And then like, yeah, then there's the argument of what would your kids miss from not having a father figure in their life. But you could probably maybe
Well, you
find
can still have a father figure and just
you could
not
have a
be in a
friend.
nuclear like family structure, right? Like it's funny because a lot of the biggest contributors, so all the like data on single moms, once you factor in or you measure for socioeconomic status and maternal education, most of it dissipates. The reason that single moms are having so much issues is because they have less money, less education, less resources, and that's what's causing a lot of it. I'm not saying fathers aren't important. Like, I love my father, especially for adolescent boys. It seems to be a thing in that age range to have like a good father figure. But like, I wouldn't mind like in my late 30s, like having a partner that, even though we're not married and we're not having this nuclear traditional family, that I feel like you would be a good father and I'm going to be a good mother. And yeah, like it doesn't need to be that we're also together in a lifelong bond in order to have
So you could
facilitated
do
positive children.
you'd rather do like a co-parenting thing with a guy than necessarily have like a husband for your whole
Yeah.
adult
And
life.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like if I'm in a stage and he's in a stage where we're like, you know what, right now I'm really into you, I think we should. And then maybe like when the kid's 5, it's like, okay, this relationship isn't really serving us anymore, but we still have a relationship to this child. And now let's figure out a way to co-parent in a way that is most conducive to this child's flourishment. I think that is fine. And a lot of
And that's
those
how
factors to
that's how a
childhood
lot
success.
of divorced parents or parents who had a kid and never got married, like they were able to co-parent and go through the
Yeah.
kid's whole life that way.
Yeah. Being able to support your kids financially and being educated and like being able to facilitate that in your kids and having resources and social support those are the ingredients you really need. This idea of like a nuclear family traditional like that isn't what is actually creating those outcomes. It's those other things. So if you can create that outside of the setting of a nuclear family, those children end up doing great. In fact, now that we're starting to get a little bit of data on donor-born children, they end up doing really great because the people that want those children are ready for them. They have their ducks in a row. They have the support. They have the resources they need to raise these children. So those children so far, and we don't have tons of like longitudinal studies yet, seem to be performing really well. And it's because the mother, whoever, was ready to have them and had everything ready for them to go. And
Okay, so
wealthy.
you currently work with, I definitely hear the like having enough money thing, because that was like I've always had just money fears my whole life. But that's because we
Yeah.
were raised on noodles and butter, so it's not really like my fault. So you have a male friend that you shoot content with. You meet
Yes.
up once a month, you shoot as many scenes as you would need for like the rest of the month. How did you come to make this content friend? This seems like somebody that one or the other of you may catch feelings. You know what I mean? It seems like a recipe for somebody to get attached.
It just works out so well. Like he's really busy and he like leaves me alone a lot of the time. And I'm very independent. And just like our personality types are you know, in a way where I don't think either of us would grow like a strong, like he's very artsy. I'm very analytical and logical. Now, this doesn't mean we don't have like a good time together, but it's not somebody that I'm just gonna be like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about like the long, amazing conversations we have. But it's like, there's enough there that I have fun doing it. I feel stimulated doing it, but I guess it's just not risky in that way. I don't feel like it's risky in that way. No.
So you have chemistry, but you don't have like a mental connection with him.
We don't have the chemistry that I think I'm gonna catch like real feelings for him. Because yeah, I typically have like a type, like personality type in the men that I fall for, and he doesn't have that. So
What's your type?
Because I like really like smart, like I love like philosophy and stuff. So I like men who are gonna sit there and we're gonna talk about like the meaning of life after sex for like 2 hours. Like, and he like can barely put 2 sentences together sometimes. So it's like,
He'd be like, meaning of life, but we just did it. We just had it. We just did the
yeah. And I don't want to say anything negative about him. He's a really cool guy. But I'm not too worried about that. And also because it's like, it's so like we see each other, and then when we're not seeing each other, we're not like in contact like all the time.
Okay.
Like, we may here and there, but it's not like, hey, good morning, how are you? Like, it's not like I have this routine or this bond with him that I nurture every day or something. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's really like cool and like easygoing. Like, I'm like, do you want to film this? Can you film this? Can you meet me here? Can you, you know?
The content friend. Okay. Has he ever caught feelings for you, or do you feel like he could? Or it seems like you've been working with him for a while.
He, even if he did, I don't think he would know how to express it. So I'm just gonna go with that.
Okay. You're like,
like in the sense
look over
like,
there.
no, in the sense of like, I don't think like he, even if he did, I don't think he would like care enough. Like, not that he wouldn't care, but I'm also very like aggressive. So I do feel like there is a sense of like, even if he did, he wouldn't say anything because he'd be afraid I would like shut it down probably.
You're like, I would own him. Yeah.
Because I would be like the type of person. Like, if he's like, I miss you, I'm like, well, what does it mean to miss someone? Like, what does that really mean? And he just hates those kind of conversations. And then he just won't say it.
Yeah. You kind of pull him out of that. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I love that you said on a previous appearance, you're like, it's a low, it sounds like, because you focus mostly on the positive aspects, but the negative aspects include that it is a lonely profession. But you also, it's not like, oh, the whole nobody wants you because you do OnlyFans. You're like, no, in fact, I have too much choice. Like, you probably have 30 guys in your DMs that would sign up to be your boyfriend tomorrow.
Paradox of choice is definitely more of an issue for me than lack of choice. But yeah, it can be very low. I'm also naturally introverted. So in other settings where I was forced to get out every day and socialize was good for me, because my natural instinct is to like, you know, lay in bed and read. So I have to fight against that now with this job, because I could just sit on the internet all day and not do anything. So I try to, you know, I literally, like, this is really sad. I will put on my to-do list, like, text back boys or like text back friends.
Oh, friends, not like your subscribers.
No, I both. Like, I will literally, if it's a specific guy, I'll be like, text back Jason if I'm trying to talk to Jason for a little bit. Or if it's just like, sometimes I'll put entertain boys. And what that means is that tells me that some time throughout the day, I should go through my phone and text back people, like men that I haven't texted back in a few days. Because it's the thing, like, of course I want to date, like I want to find someone, but it's like going to the gym where it's like, you want the result, but the like doing it and the initial part of it, like it has a good payoff, but it like sucks in the beginning, like dating, right? Like, it's like, oh, okay, I got to find someone I actually vibe with, which means I got to see if I vibe with these 50 people, and like 49 of them I probably am not. And so the easy decision is like, oh, I'm just going to sit on my couch and not go to the gym, or I'm just going to sit in my couch and like sit in my bed and like ghost all these guys. So that's definitely like a struggle for me, but I do put it on my
Whereas on OnlyFans, the payoff is right away.
Yeah.
In terms of like the time you spend messaging guys or
it sounds really bad, but because I get paid to message people, it's hard for me to message people for free hoping for a later payoff. Like, I do find that, like, I just went through, answered all these messages, and there's this guy that I find somewhat attractive that's like, hey, how's your night going? And I'm like, ugh, I don't have to do this. I don't have to answer
Is
this
he a
right now. Like,
subscriber or someone that like you could potentially be interested in to date?
no, the guy who like I'll go through my subscribers and then there'll be like a hot guy that I met somewhere and I'm like, okay, this is fun. Let's exchange numbers. And he's like, hey, so like, how's your night going? And it's like right after I finish answering that 200 times for my subscribers, I'm like, I don't want to like.
You're exhausted.
You know what I,
You're exhausted from work to like have
and because I work on my phone so much. When I'm not working, I don't like to be on my phone and I don't like to like stare at a screen. So
that makes sense.
I'm like, okay, I'm done for the night. I'm gonna take an edible and put my phone away and like do some shit or whatever. And then
kind of like you're spent. You're spent. You're like emotionally spent.
In the dating department, like friends, whatever, like it takes me like long time sometimes to get back to their text or something. And that's just because I spent all day on the internet, on the screen, interacting with people that those personal interactions sometimes get put on the back burner, especially if it's like not something that's fruitful yet, like which is with dating, right? With dating, you need to go through that initial getting to know you phase. And that's not like fun. I don't, like a lot of the time, like it's not fun in the beginning to, you know, be like, oh, so like, what do you do? Like, you know,
there's rejection, there's boring conversations. You have to laugh at jokes that aren't funny. Yeah.
Exactly. And then like you FaceTime and then like 10 minutes of FaceTime, you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not really into this guy. And you're like, how do I leave this? Oh, my mom's calling. Like, you know, it's just.
Whereas if it weren't your job, you would maybe have more bandwidth to respond to these types of messages.
For sure. When it's not your job, when you're at work all day interacting with people, then coming home and laying in bed and texting feels good. But if you've laid in bed and answered messages all day, answering additional messages from potential dating prospects that you don't have an emotional connection to yet feels taxing. It feels like another job. It feels like another thing I need to check off my list until I find somebody that I actually look forward to speaking to, that I actually want to talk to. But in order to find that person, you need to go through that. I'm like, you know, the idea someone's going to just fall into my lap and I don't have to like get to know them is not realistic.
Yeah,
so that's a goal of
2024. It takes basically 90%, like you spend 90% of your texting people back, your banter, your chatting, your curiosity, like that's gone and then by the time there would be a guy trying to message you, trying to date, it's like you just don't have it in you.
I just don't have it in me. And it's like either the conversation is just like, how's your night going? It's boring. Or if they're trying to be more interesting, then I'm like too like tired to try to have an interesting conversation. And so then I actually, because like everyone else, they're like get like a normal job. You're like moving around, you're getting up, you're doing all that. And then at the end of the night, you unwind. For me, because I'm like sitting and typing and whatever most of the day, then at the end of the night, I want to get up and like do cartwheels. Like I don't want to sit there and like and
do something
be like,
yeah.
It feels like another message I have to respond to as opposed to me trying to get to know someone. So I need to figure that out because I feel like I could be missing out, and I probably have. Like there's times where there's a guy like I'll actually think he's cool and funny, and I'll accidentally like get busy and like not respond to him for like a month and a half, and I'm like, well, now I can't like come back a month and a half later. And so I'm like, I don't want that to happen in 2024. Like I don't want to miss out on opportunities, even with friends, even with everyone, like to get to know people that could be really fruitful in my life, because I am making it a last priority. But it's hard.
Yeah, it's almost like your interpersonal curiosity is spent. So maybe that's a thing to manage. It's like, God, do I want it to be spent? Is that going to be good long term if I do want to eventually find someone? And how do you make room for that? Do you have to cut back on certain things? But
yeah, I don't know. And it's like in some ways people like, you know, they're like they meet people at work or they meet people at school, and it doesn't, but with me, that's not the case, because I don't really have a work or a school right now. So it does require me to like, even if I meet somebody in person and, you know, we have like a fleeting interaction, well, now the rest of it has to be kind of facilitated electronically until I go out with you again. And I'm picky, but not in like the red pill way of like, oh, he needs to be like a chat. I am picky in the sense of like, I want someone I feel like I can have chemistry with. And to me, that requires like really high intellect, like certain things. And so if I spend my Saturday night going on a date with a guy, chances are that, it's not going to turn into anything. Not that I wasted my time, because a lot of times you can learn a lot, you get to speak, you get to hear other perspectives, but it's like, but if I never do it, then I'm never going to have the one time where it doesn't end up like that. So you got to kind of go through that process. Like, it's like, I think of it like going to the gym. You got to just do it. It's not fun, but at the end, it's worth it. Like, I have to think of it like with that mentality, because like the last thing I want to do, like when I'm like done with everything, is like go talk to a new person,
Yeah, like I'm done talking to people. Do you go to a gym? That seems like a good place to meet people.
I do, but it's like a private gym, so I work with a trainer too, so I don't really see other people there, really.
Okay.
And no one talks to me in real life. It's weird. People always are like, "Who's everyone?"
Of the internet, the internet makes it seem like a pretty girl can't go to the gym without being constantly harassed.
No, I think it's just maybe I'm just like have like the biggest resting like bitch face, so I come off like really standoffish, because people will just stare at me, but they'll never come say anything unless they're
Men
like
are probably so damn afraid of being caught on a cell video, like, oh, I was caught hitting on or talking to this woman, and now I look like an asshole, and it's viral, and I'm on TikTok. If I were a dude at a gym, I would be like, I would tread very lightly.
Where's my gaze? Yeah.
Especially someone who looks like you, I would be like, oh, well, I'm either going to be rejected, or it's going to be a spectacle, or yeah.
Yeah. The gym videos, I went down a rabbit hole one day where I was just like watching all them, and I'm like, what are people doing?
I think it's I can tell that, a big criticism that, and this is what I'll dismount on, a big criticism you get, or people will say, oh, she's definitely been abused, she's definitely been molested, I can tell that you are not, because your confidence and because of your boundaries tell me that you were not abused, because you are not someone who could be convinced into doing something that you're not comfortable doing, which is something that women who have been abused or molested very easily to push those boundaries and end up doing.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, that's definitely true. I'm somebody who really, really respects am very cognizant of my boundaries, and I've always had my boundaries really respected. And that helps you, because you're right. When somebody has boundaries and those boundaries are not respected, it's really hard for them to have them. But I'm just like an aggressive personality type. Like when I hear stories of women who are just like, oh yeah, like he asked me to like hang, and I like didn't want to know how to say no, and I wanted to be nice, or like I had sex with him because like, I'm like, I would have been like, no, I don't care. So that's also probably a reason that I don't really get myself into those situations. Like even when I meet guys and I'm getting to know them, I don't have sex with them for a while. That's just like a personal choice, but I'll like, the first time I usually sleep at a guy's house, I'll even sleep naked, but I won't have sex with them. And I don't care. I'm like, yeah,
just to test them. Just be like, yeah.
Not even just test them. One, because I sleep naked. Two, because like I am at the point where I want to cuddle with you and I want to lay here with you, but I'm not at that point yet. And I'm the boss. So
you're not needy at all. You're not like, yeah, it takes a lot for you to get attached.
And I'm not worried about them not liking me. That's like another thing a lot of girls have, where it's like, oh, I want him to like me. I don't want him to, like go find someone else. Like, I'm just like, yeah, no, if you don't like me, that's fine. But typically what happens is they actually end up liking you more, because they're like, what's going on with her? Why is she like this?
Okay, a couple more super chats, and then thank you so much, Jazmen. This has been a really great conversation. Russell Hall, well, congratulations on choosing the path of lesser evils. I suppose lawyers are all disgusting. Shame your dad can't use the internets anymore. Oh, Russell. Morty Smith, you think Melina got all the blue hair dye in the divorce? That's a good question. Push-ups, disagree. Nuclear family is stability and commitment. I mean, I was in a nuclear family, push-ups, and I didn't feel very stable. They didn't really like each other, treat each other with respect. So I guess
the ingredients for stability and commitment aren't just having a nuclear family. It's a lot of other things, and that could be facilitated in the form of a nuclear family, but it also doesn't have to. So like in your situation, having the automatic nuclear family doesn't really mean anything if you don't have those ingredients.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, my dad was physically there, but
Yeah.
Russell Hall, if 99% of the choices making themselves available to you would buy your bath water to drink it or your underwear to smell it, what is choice? I don't even know what you're asking, Russell.
Choices made themselves. Are you talking about OnlyFans subscribers or like personal? I don't know. Okay, I don't know this question.
Maybe he's talking about choices in men. He's very mysterious, Russell Hall.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much, Jasmine. What a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun last time, and I had a lot of fun this time. Maybe I could be on another one of your subcast panels.
Oh, for sure. Everyone follow Jasmine on YouTube, on Twitter. And then there's your website is Jazmen, Jazmen Jafar.me. Anywhere else people can go to follow you.
That's it. That JazmenJafar.me will have all my links, whether you want my, normal content or you want my OnlyFans. You could pick your adventure. And yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jasmine. This was great. And thank you to the chat for your comments and questions.
Yeah,
You
thank
were
you, everybody.
relatively well behaved in the chat. Good job, everyone. And thank you, Jasmine, for sticking around. And we'll see you guys next time.